Hey guys, tonight we are going to become a novice monk in a medieval monastery, sometime around the 12th century. Imagine a silence so deep you can almost hear the blood pulsing in your ears, and a darkness so absolute that the moon and stars are the only lamps for miles. Your goal is to achieve spiritual enlightenment through prayer and work, but let's be honest, your real, moment-to-moment challenge is just trying to get through the day without falling asleep in your soup. Your chances of getting a full 8 hours are, to put it mildly, 0. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, feel free to post your city or country and the local time in the comments below. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sound that wakes you is not gentle. It is the sharp, insistent clang of a single, heavy bronze bell, a sound that slices through the profound silence of the night and feels like a physical blow. It is not a request, it is a command. You lie perfectly still for a moment, the echo of the bell vibrating in the cold air of the long stone dormitory. Every instinct in your body, every aching muscle, screams at you to pull the coarse wool blanket over your head and retreat back into the warm, inviting depths of sleep. But you cannot. The bell is the voice of God, and it has called you to work. You are in the monastery's dormitorium, a vast, cavernous hall lined with dozens of other sleeping forms. There are no private rooms here, no cozy cells. Just a series of simple pallets on the floor, each stuffed with straw that rustles with every slight movement. The air is so cold that your breath mists in a small, pale cloud before you. Far down the hall, a single candle sputters in a sconce, its tiny flame doing little to fight the oppressive darkness. This is the first and arguably the most difficult test of your day, the call to vigils, or matins. It is the first of the 8 canonical hours, the daily cycle of prayer that forms the very skeleton of monastic life. It takes place in the dead of night, usually around 2 in the morning. This rigorous schedule is the Opus Dei, the work of God, and it is the central pillar of your existence here. Resisting its call is not just laziness, it is a spiritual failure. As if to reinforce this, you hear the soft, rhythmic shuffle of sandals on the stone floor. It is the circuitor, a senior monk whose sole duty at this hour is to ensure that every single brother answers the bell. He carries a small, hooded lantern, and he glides between the rows of pallets like a ghost, peering into the shadows. He is the monastery's night watchman, its hall monitor, but with more spiritual authority and less access to a decent dental plan. His main superpower is the ability to spot a fake snore from 50 paces. If the beam of his lantern pauses on you for even a second too long, you are caught. The thought is enough to make you push back your blanket. The cold that hits you is shocking. The stone floor feels like a sheet of ice against the soles of your bare feet. You move slowly, your body stiff and protesting, and pull your habit on over your simple sleeping tunic. It is made of thick, undyed wool, a fabric designed for humility and durability, not for comfort. It has all the softness and warmth of a damp burlap sack. Fashion in the 12th century, at least within these walls, really prioritized suffering over style. Historians and theologians still debate whether the extreme lack of sleep in early monasteries was a feature or a bug of the system. Was it a deliberate tool for mortifying the flesh and testing the spirit, or was it simply the inevitable, exhausting result of trying to fit 8 full prayer services into a 24-hour day? As you stand shivering in the dark, the desire for sleep a physical ache behind your eyes, it most certainly feels like a bug. You join the silent, shuffling line of other monks making their way out of the dormitory. The procession is a river of dark, hooded shapes, moving with a practiced slowness through the freezing corridors. No one speaks, the great silence of the night is still in effect. The only sounds are the soft scrape of leather sandals on stone and the occasional sleepy cough, quickly suppressed. You walk through the open-air cloister, a covered walkway surrounding a central garden. The wind whips through the englazed stone arches, and you pull your cowl further over your head, hunching your shoulders against the biting cold. A senior monk passes you, his face a mask of stern piety in the gloom, and gives you a sharp, assessing look. You try to adopt an expression of holy contemplation, but you're fairly sure it just looks like you're trying to remember if you put your sandals on the correct feet. Finally, you arrive at the enormous wooden doors of the abbey church. Even through the thick oak, you can hear the faint, otherworldly sound of a single voice already chanting inside, a lone cantor beginning the ancient psalms. You take your place in the line, waiting to file into the dark, cold, and holy space. The work of the day is about to begin. Your body craves the warmth of your bed, but your soul, and the all-seeing eyes of your superiors, demand you be here. You file into the vast, cavernous space of the abbey church, your footsteps echoing softly in the immense silence. The air inside is colder than it was in the cloister, heavy with the scent of cold stone, beeswax, and the lingering ghost of 100 years of incense. The only light comes from the tall candles flickering on the distant high altar and a few others placed near the choir, their small flames casting huge, dancing shadows up the stone pillars and into the vaulted darkness of the ceiling. You take your designated place in the choir stalls, the rows of dark, ornately carved oak seats that face each other across the main aisle. The wood is cool and smooth beneath your hands, polished by the robes of generations of monks who have stood in this very spot. You are not permitted to sit for most of the long service to come, but the seat is hinged. When it is flipped up, it reveals a small, carved ledge on its underside. This is the misericord, or piticord. It's a tiny shelf, just big enough for you to subtly lean against, taking some of the immense strain off your legs and back during the hours of required standing. It is a small but profound act of mercy, an architectural admission that the demands of the spirit are sometimes at war with the limits of the body. The service of vigils begins. The abbot gives a signal, and the precentor, the monk in charge of the choir, intones the opening line of the first psalm. The other side of the choir responds, their voices joining in a unified, monotonous wave of sound. The chanting is in Latin, a language you are still struggling to master, and it rises and falls in a hypnotic, otherworldly rhythm. The sound fills the enormous stone sanctuary, seeming to come from the walls themselves, an ancient and holy vibration. It is beautiful, in a deeply somnolent way. It's a bit like listening to the world's holiest whale song, and it's making you desperately, profoundly sleepy. This is the true battle of vigils. It is not a struggle against sin or temptation in the grand sense, but a far more immediate and personal war against your own exhausted body. The combination of the deep cold, the repetitive, droning chant, and the simple, biological fact that it is the middle of the night, is a potent recipe for sleep. Your eyelids, which felt normal moments ago, now feel as if they are made of lead. After a long series of psalms, the chanting subsides, and the service moves into the lections, or readings. A designated reader makes his way to a large lectern, lit by a single, thick candle. He opens an enormous, heavy book, a Bible or a volume of writings by one of the church fathers, and begins to read in a clear, low monotone. The passage is from St. Benedict's own rule, detailing the virtues of humility. It is wise, it is profound, and it is very, very long. Scholars who study monasticism often wonder about the actual level of comprehension during these pre-dawn readings. Was the exhausted mind of a novice monk truly absorbing the complex theology of St. Augustine, or was the physical act of listening, the sheer endurance of being present, the real point of the exercise? You can personally attest that your own mind is currently absorbing very little. It is focused entirely on a single, desperate mantra: stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. And then, you fail. For a split second, the reader's voice fades into a meaningless drone. The cold disappears. The hard floor beneath your feet softens. Your head, which has grown impossibly heavy, dips forward in a sudden, sharp nod. The jerk back to consciousness is instant and violent. Your heart hammers in your chest. Panic floods you. You dart your eyes around in the gloom. Did anyone see? Across the aisle, you see the dark, hooded shape of the circuitor, the night watchman, moving with silent purpose along the back of the stalls. His job is to look for exactly what you just did. You snap your head up, trying to look alert and fascinated by the subtle nuances of early medieval prose. You hope your expression reads as intellectually stimulated and not so briefly unconscious. Now the battle is truly joined. You resort to the small, secret pains that monks have used for centuries to ward off sleep. You dig the nail of your thumb into the palm of your other hand. You pinch the soft skin on the inside of your thigh. You press your toes hard against the cold stone floor, trying to ground yourself in the physical world. Across the way, you see another novice across the choir stalls doing the same, a silent comrade in the struggle. Another hour passes. You've gone through several stages of tiredness and have now reached a strange, almost out-of-body state of exhaustion. You suspect that if an angel of the Lord appeared before you right now, your first question would be whether it had a spare pillow. Finally, the last prayer is said, the last Amen echoing into the vast darkness above. The service is over. A wave of relief washes over you, but it is fleeting. As you file out of the great church, back into the biting cold of the cloister, you notice the sky is still a sheet of impenetrable black. The ordeal of vigils has ended, but the day, your long day of work and prayer, has barely even begun. And you carry with you the certain, sinking knowledge that your moment of weakness was seen. The hours between the end of vigils and the next gathering are a strange, suspended time. There is a period for private reading by the light of the cloister's lamps, and then the bell tolls again for prime, the prayer service that greets the first, pale light of dawn. Through it all, you are wrestling with a quiet dread. You know your sleepy failure during the night's long service was seen by the ever-watchful circuitor. The question is not if you will be called to account for it, but when. The answer comes immediately after prime. The community files not back into the church, but into the chapter house. This is the monastery's nerve center, a formal, rectangular room with stone benches built into the walls. It is here that the day's work is assigned, community business is discussed, and, most importantly, discipline is dispensed. This is the monastery's boardroom and its courtroom, and you are about to be put on trial. The seating arrangement itself is a lesson in humility. The abbot, your spiritual father and absolute authority, sits on a high-backed, throne-like chair called a cathedra at the head of the room. The senior monks, the wise and respected elders of the community, occupy the highest benches along the walls. The rest of the monks are seated in descending order of seniority, and you, as a novice, are placed on a low, backless bench at the very front, in the center of the room. You are completely exposed, with nowhere to hide and nowhere to look but at the abbot. The meeting begins, as it always does, with a reading. A designated brother reads a chapter from the Rule of Saint Benedict, the foundational text that governs every aspect of your life. By a stroke of what feels like cosmic irony, today's chapter is on the virtue of obedience and the sin of sloth. You feel the heat rise in your cheeks, certain that every word is aimed directly at you. After the reading, the abbot discusses some mundane business, a leaky roof in the granary, the upcoming visit of a local bishop. Then, he leans forward slightly, his expression growing more serious. The business portion is over. If any brother has a fault to confess, he says, his voice calm and even, let him speak now in the spirit of humility. There is a long, tense silence. Historians debate whether these public confessions were genuinely spontaneous acts of conscience or highly ritualized performances, where monks confessed minor, expected faults to demonstrate their piety. After a moment, an older monk, Brother Michael, stands. He confesses, in a low voice, that he felt a moment of pride yesterday when observing the perfect straightness of his turnip rows in the kitchen garden. It's a shocking scandal that rocks the monastery to its very foundations. The abbot nods gravely and assigns him 2 extra psalms as penance. No one else speaks. The abbot's gaze sweeps across the room and finally lands on the circuitor, who stands. In a quiet, formal voice, the night watchman reports that during the sacred office of vigils, he observed a novice overcome by a spirit of negligence and drowsiness, failing in his duty to remain watchful. He does not use your name. He doesn't have to. Every single eye in the room, all 40 pairs, swivels to fix upon you. The abbot addresses you, and your heart sinks. But his voice is not angry. It is filled with a kind of gentle, paternal disappointment that is infinitely worse. My son, he says, the night office is our most sacred duty. It is our battle against the darkness, both in the world and in ourselves. To give in to the weakness of the flesh then is to desert your post. His words are a quiet but powerful indictment. The abbot's voice is so calm and reasonable it's almost more piercing than being yelled at. You feel like a child being gently scolded by the universe itself for forgetting to do his homework. There is only one possible response. You slide off the low bench and prostrate yourself, your face pressed against the cold, unforgiving stone of the floor. It is the ultimate gesture of submission, an admission of your fault before God and your brothers. Mea culpa, you murmur into the stone, your voice thick with shame. My fault. Lying on the floor, you have a fantastic view of everyone's sandals. You note, with a strange sense of detachment, that the abbot has a surprisingly well-made pair. It's a small, deeply inappropriate detail to focus on when you are in the middle of being spiritually disciplined. Rise, my son, the abbot says after a moment that feels like an eternity. You get to your feet and return to your seat on the low bench, avoiding the eyes of your brothers. To help you strengthen your vigilance, the abbot continues, a penance will be assigned to you. We will speak of it later. The meeting moves on to other matters, but you hear nothing. Your mind is buzzing with the shame of the public correction. It was not a cruel punishment. There was no yelling or physical discipline. But the quiet, formal, communal nature of the shaming is a heavy burden. You have been marked, and now you must wait to discover the peculiar form your medicine will take. You get through the morning's work in a fog of anxiety. You are assigned to the herb garden, a normally pleasant task of weeding between rows of lavender and thyme, but today you feel the weight of your public shaming in every pull of a stubborn root. You feel the other novices watching you. They don't say anything, of course, unnecessary conversation is forbidden, but you can feel their glances, a mixture of pity and a certain amount of self-preserving distance. You are the flock's designated stray lamb, and no one wants to get too close. The bell rings for sext, the midday prayer service, and you go through the motions of chanting and listening, your mind elsewhere. Then comes the bell for the main meal of the day. Normally, this is a moment of quiet relief, a time to replenish your energy after a long morning of work and prayer. Today, you walk towards the refectory, the monastery's dining hall, with a sense of quiet dread. As you and your brothers file into the long, high-ceilinged room, the comforting smell of vegetable pottage and warm bread fills the air. The long, communal tables are already set. The community moves as one, finding their designated places on the benches, a river of dark robes flowing into the hall. But as you go to take your usual spot among the other novices, the abbot, seated at the head table, catches your eye. He doesn't speak. He simply gives a slow, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Then, with a slight tilt of his chin, he directs your gaze to a corner of the room, near the kitchens. There, a single, small wooden table has been set up, with a single stool. It is isolated, a tiny island in the vast sea of the refectory. Your stomach plummets. This is your penance. This is the medicine for your sleepy soul. You have been subjected to the excommunicatio minor, the lesser excommunication. It is one of the most common and, in its own quiet way, one of the most powerful punishments prescribed in the rule of Saint Benedict. You are not cast out of the monastery or forbidden from entering the church. But you are severed from the community. You are forbidden from joining your brothers at the common table. You cannot lead a prayer or a response in the services. And most profoundly, your brothers are forbidden from speaking to you or acknowledging you, unless it is a direct order from a superior about your assigned work. You are a ghost in your own home. Sociologists and historians argue that in such intensely communal societies, where every single aspect of life from prayer to sleep is shared, this form of social ostracism could be a more powerful psychological punishment than any physical discipline. You feel the immediate, crushing truth of this as you walk the long, lonely path to your corner table. Every silent step feels like a mile. You can feel 50 pairs of eyes on your back. You sit down on the hard stool, your world shrunk to the small circle of your solitary table. You feel like you're in a different geographical region. If you wanted to ask for the salt, you'd have to send a raven. The refectorian, the monk in charge of the dining hall, brings you your meal. He is a kindly, older man who has, on other days, slipped you an extra piece of bread. Today, his face is a neutral mask. He places a wooden bowl of pottage and a cup of water before you without a word, his movements efficient and impersonal. His prescribed silence feels like the loudest condemnation of all. You stare down at your bowl. The food is exactly the same as what everyone else is eating, but somehow it looks and smells completely different. It tastes of shame. All around you, the life of the monastery continues. The designated reader for the week has mounted the lectern and is reading aloud from the life of a saint. His voice fills the hall, a calming, monotonous drone. You hear the quiet sounds of your brothers eating, the scrape of a spoon against a wooden bowl, the soft tear of bread. You watch them passing a loaf down the long table, a simple act of fellowship that you are now barred from. You try to eat with dignity, as if dining alone in a corner is a new, fashionable trend you're starting. The solitary contemplation diet. It's unlikely to catch on. The reader's chosen text today is about the importance of unity, of how the brothers in a monastery should be like the many limbs of a single body. The irony is so thick you could spread it on your bread. Every word about community, every phrase about fellowship, only serves to amplify your own isolation. You are so profoundly alone in this crowded room that you start to develop a personal relationship with a small, dark knot in the wood of your table. You decide to name him Bartholomew. He's a wonderful listener. The meal ends. A bell rings. The brothers stand in unison, say a silent prayer of thanks, and file out of the refectory, back to their afternoon duties. You must wait until every single one of them has left. You sit at your lonely table in the now vast and empty hall, the silence broken only by the clatter of the kitchen servants clearing the other tables. The punishment did not leave a mark on your skin, but it has left a deep and chilling bruise on your spirit. You have been taught a powerful lesson: in a life dedicated to community, there is no greater pain than being alone. You rise from your knees in the small, dark-side chapel, your body a chorus of creaks and groans. The marathon of psalm recitation has left you mentally scoured and physically frozen. You believe, with a desperate hope, that your penance is now complete. You have served your time in the solitary confinement of prayer. You are wrong. As you stumble out of the chapel, the abbot is waiting for you, his expression unreadable in the gloom. The mind has been given its labor, he says, his voice a low rumble. But the body must also learn the lesson of humility. Pride and sloth are brothers, my son, and both are born of a body that holds itself too high. He proceeds to explain the next stage of your spiritual medicine, and your heart sinks to the cold stone floor. For the next full day, before each of the 8 canonical hours, you are to present yourself at the main entrance to the abbey church. There, at the threshold, you must lie prostrate, face down, until every single one of your brothers, from the oldest priest to the youngest novice, has stepped over your body to enter for the service. The symbolism is as heavy and as cold as the stones themselves. You are to be positioned at the limen, the threshold, a place that is neither outside the church nor fully within it. You are to become a living obstacle of shame, a human welcome mat of unworthiness that the community must physically cross to enter the sacred space and approach God. It is a punishment of profound, ritualized debasement. A short time later, the bell tolls for Lauds, the dawn prayer service. While your brothers gather in the cloister, you walk ahead to the massive, carved oak doors of the church. You take a deep breath, and you get down on the floor. You lie flat on your stomach, your cheek pressed against the stone, and stretch your arms out to the sides in the shape of a cross. This is the ultimate physical posture of penance, prostratio. The stone is brutally cold and unforgiving, and its chill seeps instantly through the rough wool of your habit. You discovered a new form of monastic yoga. It's called the penitent plank. It's fantastic for the core muscles, and even better for reminding you that you're a wretched sinner. Your world shrinks to the small patch of flagstone directly in front of your eyes. You smell the ancient, dusty scent of the floor, a smell of centuries. You feel its gritty, uneven texture against your face. Then, you hear them. The soft, collective shuffle of dozens of leather sandals approaching the door. The rustle of wool habits. One by one, they arrive at the threshold. They pause, and then they step over you. You can't see their faces, only the hems of their robes and their feet. You feel the slight gust of air as each body passes over yours. No one speaks. No one touches you. To them, you are not a brother right now. You are an object, a lesson, a living symbol of a fault. Anthropologists and historians debate the psychological impact of such ritualized debasement. Did it truly foster a deep sense of humility and contrition, or did it simply create a simmering resentment and a desire for conformity at any cost? Lying there, as another pair of sandals carefully steps over your back, you feel a confusing, nauseating mix of both. You are ashamed, but a hot spark of anger at the sheer indignity of it all burns deep within you. You become an expert in the community's footwear. You can identify each monk by the state of his sandals as he steps over you. Brother Thomas, the gardener, has clumps of dirt on his. Brother Philip, the cantor, has a loose strap. The abbot's sandals are, you note, surprisingly well maintained, the leather supple and dark. It is a very niche, very specific kind of people watching. The day wears on. The bell rings for terce, the mid-morning prayer. You repeat the ritual. You lie down, they step over you. The bell rings for sext, the midday prayer. You lie down, they step over you. The pressure of the hard stone is a constant, dull ache in your cheekbone, your ribs, your knees. By the time Vespers, the evening service, rolls around, you feel you have become intimately acquainted with every crack, every chip, every subtle discoloration in the flagstones before the church door. You're considering writing a detailed geographical survey of your findings. The plains of St. Peter's threshold, you'll call it. The last of the brothers steps over you. It is the kindly old refectorian. He hesitates for just a fraction of a second longer than the others, and his step seems lighter, more careful. It is a tiny, almost imperceptible gesture, but to you, lying on the floor, it feels like a profound act of compassion. Finally, after the last service of the day, Carmpline, is over and the great silence has fallen once more, the abbot signals for you to rise. You push yourself up slowly, your body a symphony of aches. You are cold, stiff, and utterly drained. Your penance for the day is complete. You are permitted to enter the church and take your place for the final prayers, but you still feel like you are on the outside looking in. The physical act is done, but the memory of being a human threshold, of being literally walked over by your entire world, will not fade so easily. You have been subjected to the excommunicatio minor, the lesser excommunication. It is one of the most common and, in its own quiet way, one of the most powerful punishments prescribed in the rule of Saint Benedict. You are not cast out of the monastery or forbidden from entering the church. But you are severed from the community. You are forbidden from joining your brothers at the common table. You cannot lead a prayer or a response in the services. And most profoundly, your brothers are forbidden from speaking to you or acknowledging you, unless it is a direct order from a superior about your assigned work. You are a ghost in your own home. Sociologists and historians argue that in such intensely communal societies, where every single aspect of life from prayer to sleep is shared, this form of social ostracism could be a more powerful psychological punishment than any physical discipline. You feel the immediate, crushing truth of this as you walk the long, lonely path to your corner table. Every silent step feels like a mile. You can feel 50 pairs of eyes on your back. You sit down on the hard stool, your world shrunk to the small circle of your solitary table. You feel like you're in a different geographical region. If you wanted to ask for the salt, you'd have to send a raven. The refectorian, the monk in charge of the dining hall, brings you your meal. He is a kindly, older man who has, on other days, slipped you an extra piece of bread. Today, his face is a neutral mask. He places a wooden bowl of pottage and a cup of water before you without a word, his movements efficient and impersonal. His prescribed silence feels like the loudest condemnation of all. You stare down at your bowl. The food is exactly the same as what everyone else is eating, but somehow it looks and smells completely different. It tastes of shame. All around you, the life of the monastery continues. The designated reader for the week has mounted the lectern and is reading aloud from the life of a saint. His voice fills the hall, a calming, monotonous drone. You hear the quiet sounds of your brothers eating, the scrape of a spoon against a wooden bowl, the soft tear of bread. You watch them passing a loaf down the long table, a simple act of fellowship that you are now barred from. You try to eat with dignity, as if dining alone in a corner is a new, fashionable trend you're starting. The solitary contemplation diet. It's unlikely to catch on. The reader's chosen text today is about the importance of unity, of how the brothers in a monastery should be like the many limbs of a single body. The irony is so thick you could spread it on your bread. Every word about community, every phrase about fellowship, only serves to amplify your own isolation. You are so profoundly alone in this crowded room that you start to develop a personal relationship with a small, dark knot in the wood of your table. You decide to name him Bartholomew. He's a wonderful listener. The meal ends. A bell rings. The brothers stand in unison, say a silent prayer of thanks, and file out of the refectory, back to their afternoon duties. You must wait until every single one of them has left. You sit at your lonely table in the now vast and empty hall, the silence broken only by the clatter of the kitchen servants clearing the other tables. The punishment did not leave a mark on your skin, but it has left a deep and chilling bruise on your spirit. You have been taught a powerful lesson: in a life dedicated to community, there is no greater pain than being alone. You sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted, your body and mind scoured by the marathon of penance. You wake the next morning feeling as though you have been physically beaten, your knees and elbows a collection of dull, throbbing aches from your time on the cold stone floor. You hope, you pray, that your transgressions have been paid for. But the abbot, it seems, is not yet finished with his course of spiritual medicine. After the morning chapter meeting, he calls you aside. You have disciplined your body with prostration and focused your mind with the Psalms, he says, his gaze steady and intense. But the sin of sloth often finds its expression through the tongue, in idle chatter, in complaints, in a failure to offer praise. Your tongue, therefore, must also be disciplined. He informs you that for the next 3 days, you are forbidden from speaking at all. Any communication must be made using the monastery's official sign language. Silence, of course, is already a cornerstone of monastic life. The great silence is observed through the night, and speech is restricted in the church, the refectory, and the dormitory. But this is a different order of quiet. This is a personal vow of silence, imposed upon you. You are to become a mute in a world that, for all its quiet, still runs on a complex system of communication. You have been learning the basics of the sign language as all novices do, but you are far from fluent. You know the sign for the bread and water, for church and sleep. You are about to discover how inadequate that vocabulary is. Your first challenge arrives swiftly. Your work for the day is in the scriptorium, where you are tasked with copying a simple text. The nib on your quill, however, is split. You need a new one, a small knife to sharpen it, and a bit of ink. You need to ask the master of the scriptorium, Brother Anselm, a stern, elderly monk with very little patience for novices. You approach him and try to communicate your need. You make the sign for knife by drawing the index finger of your right hand across the palm of your left, as if whittling a stick. Brother Anselm just stares at you blankly. You try again, more emphatically. He then thinks you are signing pig, a similar gesture, and gives you a look of deep confusion. You shake your head and try to sign writing by mimicking the act of using a quill. He now thinks you want a book. You are trying to ask for a small knife. After 5 minutes of increasingly frantic gesturing, Brother Anselm is convinced you are either describing a rare type of fish or confessing to having murdered a very short pilgrim. Communication has utterly collapsed. You watch later as two of the senior monks have a silent conversation from across the cloister garden. It is a dizzying, balletic display of flying hands. They discuss the health of the apple trees, the need for a specific type of liturgical vestment for an upcoming feast day, and the quality of the latest batch of ale. Their hands shape intricate, specific signs for different types of apples, for the particular saint whose feast is approaching, for the difference between weak ale and strong ale. It is a rich, detailed, and completely impenetrable language. Linguists and historians still debate whether this monastic sign language constituted a true language with its own grammar and syntax, or if it was simply a collection of elaborate gestures, a signed lexicon without sentence structure. From your perspective, as you struggle to even ask for a drink of water, it feels like a very real language, and one in which you are a failing, illiterate student. The frustration is immense. You have thoughts, you have questions, but you are trapped inside the prison of your own mind. The inability to speak makes you feel clumsy and slow-witted. It is an isolation more profound than eating alone. You can be in a room full of your brothers, but if you cannot speak, you are effectively invisible. You see a fellow novice stumble and spill a bucket of water all over the floor. Your first instinct, a deeply ingrained one, is to laugh and make a sarcastic comment. But you cannot. The sound dies in your throat. It is a strange and powerful discipline, the inability to mock your friends. After a full day of frustrating, almost comical failures, you begin to learn. You force yourself to slow down, to make your gestures more deliberate, more precise. You return to Brother Anselm. This time, you make the sign for writing, then the sign for bird, for the feather quill, then the sign for knife, and then you hold your thumb and forefinger a tiny distance apart to indicate small. A flicker of understanding crosses Anselm's stern face. He gives a curt nod, retrieves a small penknife, and hands it to you. The sense of victory is completely out of proportion to the event. You feel like you've just successfully negotiated a complex peace treaty between warring nations. You want to shout for joy, but of course, you cannot. You simply give a humble nod and return to your work. The 3 days of silence crawl by. When the abbot finally gives you permission to speak again, the first words you utter, a simple "Thank you, Father," feel alien and loud in your own ears. Your voice is raspy from disuse. You have been taught that speech is a privilege, not a right. The penance has forced you to think before you communicate, to weigh what is truly necessary to say. It has, in its own strange way, brought you a new and deeper appreciation for the virtue of quiet. The days of your penitential diet blend into a single, monotonous cycle of hunger and prayer. The world takes on a slightly fuzzy, unreal quality. Your body, fueled by nothing more than coarse bread and cold water, feels light and weak. Standing for the long services is a challenge, and the gnawing emptiness in your stomach is a constant, dull companion, a physical prayer of penance you never stop reciting. You are, at least, allowed to sit with your brothers again, and your voice has been returned to you. You cling to these small mercies. You tell yourself the worst is over. You are still on the path to redemption. You attend Vespers, the evening prayer service, determined to be a model of piety. The hunger makes you feel lightheaded, but you focus your entire being on the service, your voice joining in the familiar, soaring chants. Even as a novice, you have been given a small but official role to play in the liturgy. A specific duty, an officium. It is your task, just before the chanting of the Magnificat, to take a lit taper and light the 2 tall candles on the lectern of the precentor. The precentor, Brother Clement, is the master of the choir, a stern but fair monk with a voice like a trumpet and an encyclopedic knowledge of the divine services. It was he who assigned you this role. It is a simple task, taking no more than a moment, but it is your task. It is your small, visible contribution to the glory of God and the beauty of the service. It makes you feel part of the intricate, sacred machine. As the service progresses, the moment for the Magnificat approaches. The choir completes the preceding psalm, and in the brief, hushed pause that follows, you prepare to step forward from your place in the stalls. You are ready to perform your duty perfectly, to show the abbot and your brothers that you are vigilant and worthy. But as you begin to move, Brother Clement, from his place at the head of the choir, catches your eye. He gives a single, sharp, almost imperceptible shake of his head. It is a clear and absolute command, stay where you are. Your blood runs cold. A moment later, he looks past you and gives a slight nod to another novice, a boy named Leo who only arrived at the monastery a few months ago. You watch, frozen, as Leo's face lights up with a mixture of terror and immense pride. He steps forward, takes the taper from the altar boy, and walks to the precentor's lectern. With a slightly trembling hand, he lights the candles. Your candles. The sting of this moment is surprisingly sharp, more painful than the hunger in your gut or the shame of eating alone. To be disciplined is one thing, you know you earned it. But this is different. This is the punishment of being made irrelevant. Your one small purpose, your tiny cog in the great liturgical clock, has been removed and given to another. You are, at this moment, officially useless. Historians who study the emotional lives of medieval people often point to these small, public roles and responsibilities as a key source of personal identity and self-worth, the loss of which could be devastating. You are living, breathing proof of this academic theory. You watch Leo as he completes the task. He does a perfectly adequate job. You, however, find yourself mentally critiquing his every move. His angle of approach to the wick was all wrong, you think bitterly. His hand was unsteady. His flame-to-wick contact was clearly amateurish. It is a petty and uncharitable internal monologue, but it is all you have to cling to. The choir begins the glorious, soaring chant of the Magnificat, "My soul doth magnify the Lord." The voices of your brothers swell to fill the church, but today, you cannot appreciate the beauty. You are consumed by your own failure. Having been stripped of your one, tiny job, you now have ample time for other spiritual pursuits during the service, like counting the number of stones in the archway opposite you, or mentally cataloging all of your life's mistakes. You are currently on mistake number 47, and it's a big one. The service ends. As the monks file out of the church in the fading twilight, you see a few of the other novices congratulating Leo with a silent pat on the shoulder. He has your job now. He is a person of responsibility. You are just the you. The punishment is elegant in its quiet cruelty. It inflicts no new pain, it simply takes away your function. You feel a sudden, deeply unholy urge to find Leo and tell him that Brother Clement actually prefers the candles to be lit from left to right. It is a petty, ridiculous lie, born of pure envy, but the temptation is immense. You are clearly not yet cured of your sinful nature. You walk back towards the dormitory, the hunger in your stomach a familiar ache. But this new feeling, this sharp, piercing sting of being made redundant, is a far greater pain. You have been disciplined in your mind, your body, and your voice. Now, your very purpose has been suspended. In a world where every man has a specific and vital role to play in the grand, unending service of God, you are learning that the most peculiar and painful punishment of all may be to have no role at all. The strange peace you found in the rhythmic, mindless task of polishing candlesticks lingers into the next morning. You have scrubbed away the tarnish on the brass and, in doing so, seem to have scrubbed your own mind clean of its resentful thoughts. You feel a quiet sense of accomplishment. The work was pointless, yet you did it well. You dare to hope that this might be the end of your trials, that you will be restored to your normal duties. After the morning chapter meeting, the abbot beckons you forward. He looks at you with an expression that is neither kind nor unkind. It is the look of a master craftsman inspecting a piece of wood for flaws. Your hands have learned the lesson of diligence, my son, he says. But your fault was one of public weakness. Therefore, it must be worn outwardly, as a lesson to the community and a constant reminder to yourself. He gestures to the sacristan, Brother Paul, who comes forward holding a small, peculiar object. It is a block of light-colored wood, crudely carved into the unmistakable shape of a small pillow. A rough cord of spun wool is threaded through a hole in its center. The abbot takes the wooden pillow and places the cord over your head. The object settles against your chest, a solid, tangible weight on top of your habit. You will wear this signum, the abbot instructs, for 7 days. Let it be a reminder to you, and to all your brothers, of the sin of sloth, and the danger of giving in to the soft comforts of the flesh. This is a new and mortifying form of penance. You must now wear a physical symbol of your specific failure. A knight wears a crest to show his lineage and valor. You must wear a wooden pillow to advertise your laziness. It is a piece of liturgical, wearable sarcasm. Historians and sociologists debate the function of such shame signs. Were they purely for the penitent's own spiritual correction, or were they more a tool for reinforcing community norms by making an example of the offender? As you stand there, feeling the awkward weight of the pillow against your sternum, you are quite certain it is both. It's the latest in monastic fashion, the penitential necklace. It's not very subtle. You feel like a prize-winning ox at a country fair, but instead of a blue ribbon for best in show, you've won the laziest novice of the month. The object itself isn't heavy, but its psychological weight is immense. It is a constant companion, a third party in every interaction. As you walk through the cloister, you see your brother's eyes flicker down to the wooden pillow before they quickly look away, their faces carefully neutral. No one has to say a word. The pillow says everything for them. You are restored to your duties in the garden, a small mercy. But even there, the pillow is a nuisance. When you bend over to pull a stubborn weed, it swings forward, bumping against your chin. When you carry a wicker basket of vegetables, it gets tangled in the handle. It is a constant, clumsy, physical manifestation of your spiritual clumsiness. You try to ignore it, to pretend it isn't there, but it is hard to achieve a state of spiritual bliss when you have what is essentially a small, uncomfortable log hanging around your neck. It really gets in the way of pious contemplation. In the choir, during the services, it is at its most powerful. You stand in your place, your voice joining the chants, but you feel like a fraud. You are marked. The wooden pillow seems to absorb the holy sounds, a dead weight of shame in a place of beauty. You see a few of the younger novices sneaking glances at you, their eyes wide with a mixture of pity and a healthy dose of fear. You have become a walking cautionary tale. Your new, unspoken name is Brother Don T. Let this be you. The 7 days pass with an excruciating slowness. Finally, the morning arrives when your penance is complete. The abbot himself removes the wooden pillow from around your neck. The feeling of lightness is immediate and startling. You feel as though you have been carrying a bag of stones for a week. The physical object is gone, but its lesson is branded into you. You have learned that in a community where every action is observed and has meaning, shame can be a garment. It can be a heavy weight worn for all to see, a constant and powerful reminder of the straight and narrow path, and how easy it is to be tempted by the soft, comfortable verges. You stand before the abbot in the center of the chapter house, the space on your chest where the wooden pillow once hung feeling unnervingly light. You have endured a week of public humiliation, a week of being a walking symbol of sloth. Now that it is over, a tentative hope begins to sprout in your heart. You have done the work, you have worn the sign, you have suffered the isolation. Surely, your penance is now complete. Surely, you can finally fade back into the anonymous ranks of the novitiate. The abbot, however, is not finished. He does not dismiss you. Instead, he turns his body slightly to address the entire assembled community, though his eyes remain locked on yours. You realize with a fresh wave of horror that this is not a private absolution. This is a public summation. You are to be the centerpiece of this morning's sermon. The abbot's authority in this room is absolute. He is the paterfamilias, the spiritual father of the monastery, and his word is law. His sermons to the chapter are the primary tool through which he instructs, corrects, and molds the souls under his care. Today, the soul to be molded is yours, and the entire community has a front row seat. His voice, when he begins to speak, is not loud, but it is clear and resonant, carrying to every corner of the stone room. My brothers, he begins, today we conclude the discipline of a novice who allowed the demon of acedia to find a home in his heart. He looks directly at you. During the sacred night office, when the world slept and our voices rose to praise God, this brother chose the comfort of sleep. He abandoned his post in our spiritual army. The words are like stones, each one landing with a heavy thud in the silent room. He then proceeds to lay out your entire course of treatment, explaining the purpose of each penance with the calm, detached air of a physician describing a cure. It is as if he is working his way down a list, a tariff of sins and their corresponding remedies. Because his mind was filled with the fog of sloth, the abbot's voice echoes, we prescribe the cleansing fire of the Psalms, that his thoughts might be scoured and refocused on the Word of God. Because he chose the soft comfort of his palate over his duty, his body was taught the hardness of humility, prostrate upon the stone threshold of this holy place. Because he held his own ease in higher esteem than the fellowship of his brothers, he was taught the pain of solitude, eating his bread alone. Because his tongue was silent in prayer when it should have been praising, his tongue was bound by the discipline of silence, to teach him the value of speech. Because his body craved ease, his body was disciplined by hunger, to remind him that man does not live on bread alone. Because he forgot his holy purpose, he was given a purposeless task, that he might learn to find purpose not in the work, but in the act of work itself. And because his sin was a private weakness, hidden in the dark, we brought it into the light, that he might wear his fault openly as a sign of his repentance. The abbot's speech is a masterpiece of rhetoric. Historians debate how much an abbot's disciplinary speeches were personal and how much they followed established rhetorical formulas for admonishing a wayward monk. It feels both deeply, woundingly personal, and yet polished and rehearsed, as if you are just the latest in a long line of lazy novices to receive this exact lecture. It's so well structured, you feel you should be paying him a consultation fee. He then turns his gaze to the other novices, who are all sitting bolt upright, their faces a perfect picture of attentiveness. "Look upon this brother," he commands. "See in his struggle a mirror to your own." The temptation to spiritual laziness is a serpent that slithers into every cell. This is how we fight it. Not with anger, but with the loving, corrective discipline of our community. In that moment, you have been transformed from a person into a teaching aid. Finally, his eyes return to you. His voice softens, just slightly. The medicine has been administered. The sickness in your soul has been addressed. The choice, now, is yours. To walk the path of diligence, or to once again wander into the weeds of sloth, where the soul withers. He is giving you back your own will, your own responsibility. He makes it sound so simple. Path A, diligence, prayer, salvation. Path B, weeds, despair, and, presumably, more embarrassing and uncomfortable neckwear. You make a firm, silent vow to stick to path A. He finishes speaking and, with a simple nod, dismisses you. You walk back to your low bench, your face burning with a shame so profound it feels like a physical heat. The various punishments were difficult, but to have your soul so thoroughly, so methodically, so publicly dissected and displayed, that is the sharpest and most lasting pain of all. The rebuke is over, but the echo of his words, and the memory of 50 pairs of eyes watching you as a lesson in failure, will remain with you for a very, very long time. The public sermon in the chapter house leaves you feeling hollowed out, a vessel emptied of pride and filled with a quiet, lingering shame. You go about your work for the rest of the day in a subdued haze, keeping your eyes down, expecting to be shunned. You are the community's cautionary tale, the living example of failure. You imagine this feeling will be your new, permanent companion. Late in the afternoon, as you are washing muddy vegetables from the garden, a novice approaches. The abbot summons you, he says, and you feel a familiar lurch of dread. What now? Is there some part of your soul that was not sufficiently dissected in his morning lecture? With a sense of weary resignation, you dry your hands and make your way back to his study. You enter the small, austere room, expecting to stand before him like a prisoner before a judge. But the abbot's demeanor has changed entirely. The formal, stern authority he wore in the chapter house is gone. In its place is a quiet, gentle concern. He gestures not for you to stand, but for you to sit on the simple wooden stool opposite his desk. In all your time at the monastery, you have never been invited to sit in his presence. It is a small gesture, but it feels monumental. It is an invitation not to a trial, but to a conversation. "My son," he begins, his voice soft, "I know the past weeks have been difficult for you." He leans forward, his hands clasped on the desk. "I want you to understand the purpose of this medicine. When a brother falls into sin, the monastery becomes his hospital, and I, as abbot, must become his physician. This is the core of his belief, a principle straight from the rule of Saint Benedict." He is not a king dispensing justice, he is a doctor treating a sickness. He explains that your soul was ill, infected with the dangerous fever of acedia, of spiritual sloth. And like any good physician, he had to apply the necessary remedies, however unpleasant. He revisits the series of punishments you endured, but reframes each one within this medical metaphor. The lesser excommunication, he explains, was like quarantining a patient to prevent the sickness of bad example from spreading. The marathon of Psalms was a strong dose of medicine for the mind, designed to purge the fever of distraction. The prostration on the cold floor was a form of painful but necessary surgery, to cut out the deep, hidden tumor of pride. The diet of bread and water was a cleansing fast to purify a system made sluggish by spiritual indulgence. It all sounds so logical, so clinical when he puts it that way. It's as if you were suffering from a well-documented ailment called advanced sleepiness, and he was simply following the established treatment protocol. He explains that the cures must be tailored to the patient. For a brother sick with pride, he might assign the most humbling tasks. For one sick with anger, a regimen of silent contemplation. Your illness, a weakness of will, required a cure that would build spiritual strength through a series of escalating challenges. He looks at you with an expression of genuine concern. The rule commands me, he says softly, quoting the foundational text of his life, to hate the sin, but love the brother. He lets the word settle in the quiet room. None of what you endured was born of anger, child. It was born of a desire to see you healed. Scholars of monastic history often debate the line between discipline and cruelty in the medieval world, but the rule of Saint Benedict itself is clear on this point. The goal is always healing, never retribution. For the first time, you see him not as a terrifying, all-powerful judge, but as a tired, overburdened doctor, responsible for the spiritual health of 100 difficult, complicated souls. You almost feel sorry for him. Do you understand? He asks. And in that moment, you do. The complex, painful, and often bizarre series of events finally clicks into place. You see the intricate design behind it all. The pain of isolation was meant to teach you the joy of community. The boredom of the pointless task was meant to force you to find purpose inside yourself, not in the work. The public shame was meant to break down the wall of pride that keeps a man from truly knowing himself. It was the most profound and insightful performance review you have ever received. You leave his study as the late afternoon sun streams through the cloister arches, casting long, warm shadows. A great weight, one you didn't even fully realize you were carrying, has been lifted from your shoulders. You were not being tormented. You were not being punished out of anger. You were being healed. The medicine was bitter, but for the first time, you can taste the love and care that were its true, hidden ingredients. You walk out of the abbot's study and back into the life of the monastery. The late afternoon sun is slanting through the cloister arches, warming the ancient stones. The world is exactly the same as it was 10 minutes ago, but you feel as though you have been fundamentally reborn. The heavy, damp cloak of shame you have been wearing for weeks has been lifted, and in its place is a new and unfamiliar sense of lightness. You finally understand. The bell rings for Vespers, the evening prayer service, and as you walk towards the church, you feel none of the dread or anxiety that has been your constant companion. You feel only a quiet, hopeful anticipation. After the service, the bell rings again for the evening meal. You file into the refectory with your brothers, your heart calm. You look towards the corner where your small, lonely table of penance had been set up for what felt like an eternity. It is gone. With a feeling of profound relief, you take your usual place on the low bench among the other novices. You sit, fold your hands, and wait, your eyes fixed on the table before you. You watch the serving brothers making their way down the long tables. You see them ladling out the evening meal, a thick, steaming pottage of beans and herbs, fragrant with the smell of the kitchen garden. You see them placing a thick slice of the community's good, soft bread next to each bowl. When the server arrives at your spot, he does not hesitate. He does not pass you by. He smiles at you, a small, genuine smile, and ladles a full, steaming portion into your empty bowl. He places a piece of bread beside it and fills your cup with the watery, refreshing ale. This simple, routine act, one you have watched from afar with deep longing, now feels like a coronation. The simple pottage, objectively a humble meal of beans and onions, tastes like the most delicious and exquisite feast you have ever eaten. You are sure you can taste notes of pure, unadulterated forgiveness. The true welcome comes not in words, but in the tiny, unspoken gestures of your brothers. The novice sitting next to you, a boy who has meticulously avoided making eye contact with you for weeks, gently nudges the small wooden bowl of salt closer to your plate, a silent offering. Across the table, an older monk catches your eye and gives you a single, slow, welcoming nod. These small kindnesses are the threads that begin to stitch you back into the fabric of the community. It is difficult for modern, individualistic societies to fully grasp the profound importance of communal belonging in the medieval monastery, where a monk's identity was almost entirely subsumed into the collective. To be a part of the whole again is to feel your own soul restored. The next day, the restoration is made official. In the chapter house, the abbot announces simply that your time of penance is complete and that you are to be received back into the full grace of the community. Later, in the church, during the celebration of the Mass, the moment comes for the offering of peace. The abbot gives the sign of peace to the monk next to him, who passes it to the next, and so on down the line. When the monk next to you turns, he doesn't hesitate. He clasps your shoulders firmly, his grip strong and reassuring. This formal, slightly awkward medieval hug is the liturgical seal on your return. After weeks of being treated like a ghost, it feels like the warmest embrace in the world. Your duties are restored. During the evening service, when the time comes for the Magnificat, Brother Clement, the precentor, looks at you and gives a curt, expectant nod. You step forward, your heart swelling with a quiet pride. Your hand is steady as you take the lit taper and touch it to the wicks of the two tall candles. The flames spring to life, bright and clear in the gathering dusk. You have your purpose back. You are no longer just an observer, you are a participant. You are a guardian of the holy flame, a master of the waxy arts. You are, at last, home. The memory of the punishment remains, but it is no longer a source of shame. It is the memory of a bitter medicine that has, against all odds, worked to cure. It is a scar that reminds you of a sickness overcome, and a lesson learned. The simple joy of belonging, a feeling you once took for granted, is now the most precious thing you possess. Your career as a vigil is now measured not in days or weeks, but in the quiet accumulation of countless patrols. The city at night has become your natural habitat, its rhythms as familiar as your own breathing. On this particular night, you are walking the last leg of your shift in the deepest, most silent hour, the one just before the dawn. The air is cool and still. The boisterous drunks have found their way home, the stray dogs have curled up in the alleyways, and even the city's relentless energy seems to be holding its breath. This is the moment of the turn. It is a change you have learned to feel rather than see. The darkness, which a moment ago felt absolute and eternal, softens at the edges. The black sky deepens to a dark, velvety blue in the east. The stars, which had been sharp, brilliant points of light, begin to fade, as if growing weary themselves. This is the moment your long vigil begins to end. And then you see the first stirrings of life. Not from the grand villas of the wealthy, but from the city's working heart. A single light appears in the window of a bakery, a warm, yellow square against the gloom. Soon, the faint, wonderful smell of baking bread drifts through the air, a scent of pure comfort. The baker, a man you now recognize, gives you a tired wave as he slides his first batch of loaves into the hot brick oven. A few streets over, you hear the first metallic clang from a blacksmith's workshop. These are the matutini, the early risers, whose work begins long before the sun's. Their fires are a risk, and you watch them with a practiced eye, but they are also a sign that the city is returning to itself. The rising sun is your greatest ally. As it begins to climb, its light spills into the streets and alleys, chasing away the deep shadows where danger likes to hide. The threat of an unnoticed fire, the kind that can consume an entire tenement while its residents sleep, recedes with the darkness. An awakened city is its own best watchman. It's impossible to know what an individual vigil truly felt during these quiet moments, but one can speculate that this daily transition from dark to light held a profound, almost religious significance, a small, personal victory against the forces of chaos and night. You pass an insula that looks much like the one you grew up in, a towering, rickety structure packed with sleeping souls. A lamp flickers on one of the upper floors. A year ago, that sight would have filled you with a familiar, gnawing anxiety. Tonight, you feel only a quiet sense of ownership, of guardianship. You are the reason that light can burn safely. You are the watcher on the walls. The sun continues to rise, a spectacular display of purple and orange and gold. It's a beautiful sight, which is only slightly ruined by the fact that it illuminates all the grime and refuse in the gutters that you hadn't noticed in the dark. The sounds of the city change. The nocturnal quiet is replaced by the clatter of heavy wooden shutters being thrown open. The murmur of conversations begins to drift from windows. You hear the lowing of cattle being driven towards the forum, the squeal of cart wheels, the rhythmic shouts of merchants setting up their stalls for the day. Your shift is ending. You see a senator, clad in a fresh, brilliantly white toga, leaving his villa, looking rested and ready for a day of important speeches. You wonder how he would feel if he knew his peaceful sleep was guaranteed by a handful of exhausted little bucket men who haven't seen their own beds yet. Ahead, you see the familiar, solid gates of your statio. The patrol is over. The city is awake and, for another day at least, it is safe. You march the last few paces, the weariness in your bones a familiar friend. You have done the work. You have kept the watch. And you have survived to see another dawn. And so your day, and our story, comes to its final, quiet close. You are lying on your simple pallet in the deep and peaceful silence of the sleeping monastery, the gentle, rhythmic breathing of your brothers the only sound in the hushed world. The great, difficult work of the day is done, the lessons have been learned, and the soul, at last, is calm. There is nothing left to do now but let go, to allow the gentle darkness to be a soft and welcome blanket. Feel your own body growing heavy, your own mind letting go of the day's worries. Your own watch is over. The need to be vigilant can fade, replaced by a sense of peace and security. Let the quiet of the cloister fill your own room, and allow the steady, peaceful rhythm of the sleeping monastery to guide your own breath. There is nothing left to do but rest, drifting down, down into the deep, quiet, and healing waters of sleep. Sweet dreams.